Hello and welcome to yet another video, and in this video I would like to talk about this camera right here. It's the Canon EOS 20D. Now this camera came out quite a long time ago. I believe it was back in 2004, and it only has like 8 megapixels, but it was still quite a major successor to the 10D compared to the resolution and the EFS lenses that it finally accepts, and yeah, just so many more. And to be honest, even nowadays I still really enjoy using this camera, and in this video I'll be covering the usability, the ergonomics, the image quality, and why I pretty much like this camera. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the Canon EOS 20D. Now this camera came out quite a long time ago, as I mentioned earlier, and to be honest with you guys, I still love the image quality of this camera and also pretty much how it operates. It doesn't have the latest and the greatest features out there, but I think if you're just posting it on social media, it's still a great camera to use, and especially for the price that you can find it for nowadays, depending on the condition of course. It's really a bargain in my opinion, especially for the image quality. So in this video, I'll be dividing into 3 different sections. The first, I'll be talking about the ergonomics, how it operates and everything, and then I'll be touching into the image quality, and then I'll also be touching into my conclusion as the ending of the video. So for the ergonomics and the operational side of this camera, well, this camera is actually built very well in my opinion. It's actually made out of magnesium alloy, so it's really solid. The grip is also quite deep enough, but also really comfortable. And also I really love how it's weather sealed, which means that assuming you have a weather sealed lens mounted onto this camera, then you can actually also just take it out to some rainy weather, some snowstorm weather, and even to the beach if you want to, and no sand will get inside, no water will get inside. Of course it's not waterproof, so don't put it into a pond or something, but yeah, if you have weather sealed lenses to go with this camera, then I'd say that it's pretty much still a really rugged and tough camera to really go out with and also rely on. And talking about reliability, this camera I find is actually quite reliable. The autofocusing system is quite good. It is quite accurate as well. It is not the fastest. It is only like 9 AF points in there, but to me, for like basic street photography, basic portrait photography, I think that this camera is actually quite a nice camera to use. So let me actually show you the shutter sound and the focusing speed. So focusing on the camera, background, you guys, background. It is actually very fast and quite snappy as well, as you can actually hear from the beeping of the autofocusing confirming. And also, oh yeah, the shutter sound. There's something about there's actually something about the mechanical sound of the mechanical shutter of this camera that I really love. It is actually quite harsh, but also quite nice sounding, and it's not as harsh as, say, some of the more modern cameras like the 70D, because with the Canon EOS 70D, in my experience, that camera, it actually is a bit too harsh in my opinion, because, or at least in my experience, because even using like, let's say 30th of a shutter speed, that camera can cause a little bit of image blur. Of course, it has a much higher resolution than this camera, which could also contribute to that, but usually even with the 24 megapixel camera, when shooting at 30th of a second, for me, it wouldn't really cause image blur, whereas with that it does. But with this one, it just, the right harshness of the shutter, and yeah, it just doesn't really contribute to any image blur of the camera, and you don't really feel the vibration that much either, so it's just a very sweet spot. But anyway, talking about the shutter, it does go all the way to 8,000th of a second, so I think that it's actually quite nice, because many of the cameras actually just stop at 4,000th of a second, but this one go all the way to 8,000th. So if you're using, let's say, an f1.2 lens or any shallow depth of field lens with this camera, it will still handle it quite well. Oh, another point about this camera is that it actually shoots 5 frames per second, and I think that it's actually quite nice. Sure, the buffer is not really long, but if you're actually just photographing, let's say, a little bit of moving portraits here and there and a little bit of wildlife here and there, I think that the buffer can actually keep up, because it doesn't really take long to really write or empty the buffer after it's full. Let's say if you're shooting RAW, I feel like it's shooting at around 5 or 6 RAW before it has to buffer out, so you're getting about 1 or 1 second-ish. But if you're shooting JPEG though, and for JPEG, it's actually quite nice because it actually manages to shoot over 20 frames per second, sorry, 20 buffers on that, 20 JPEGs, yeah, per buffer. So yeah, and the next point is something I personally find an advantage because it actually takes CF card for media storage. I personally love CF cards because they're really reliable and they actually write very fast as well. And in my opinion, they don't really corrupt as much as SD cards. So to me, it's definitely a bonus. And another bonus point is actually the battery life. The battery life of this camera actually lasts really long in my opinion. Of course, it doesn't really require a lot. It doesn't have live view to really, focus on. So all it really has to do is just show you the information up here and also activate the shutter curtain and the mirror every time it takes pictures. Also the autofocusing drive, of course. But yeah, because this camera doesn't really require a lot, the battery can actually last for weeks depending on the workload on this camera that, you set it to. But yeah, for general go out and take pictures, things like that, some basic photography on the streets, things like that, basic portraits, it will actually last for about a week in my opinion, well, in my experience rather. So yeah, but if you're photographing, let's say events or weddings, things like that, it will definitely last through the whole wedding. You can even shoot multiple weddings should you wish to do so with only one battery, though I really recommend bringing 2 or 3. But yeah, in my experience, just one fully charged battery will actually last for quite a long time. Oh, and just talking about the basics of this camera is actually quite basic when it comes to the screen. It only has a 1.8-inch screen here, but to me, in my experience, it's actually good enough to adjust your color on, to adjust your brightness and everything on. You can just scroll through the menus and everything, and yeah, it just serves the purpose as a screen. To be honest, even though it's a very old screen, it is still bright enough to even judge your color of your images when you're shooting in, let's say, bright sunlight, though sometimes you might have to find like little shade or just shade your screen a little bit like this, but nothing major to really complain about, especially for the price point as well. So yeah, and moving on to the next point, this camera actually allows you to actually tether shoot as well if you have like the USB cable for it, and also if you have the software from Canon, or even Lightroom will do tethering if you want to tether. Of course, you will need the mini USB cable to connect from this camera to your computer, but no big deal. And with such a small file of this camera that it produces, it actually transfers really quickly as well. So if you're into tether shooting, then this camera will actually still support that. So yeah, that's actually quite good. And also, you have an old school hot shoe up here if you want to add like flashes, but also other accessories like your wireless trigger on here, which will still work with this camera. So even though you're getting like a very cheap camera, but you will still get your full manual control in every single aspect of this camera that it actually can offer. The native ISO on this camera though is not really as impressive as, let's say, the more modern cameras. Of course, it only goes between 100 to around 1600 natively, but personally I wouldn't really go over 800 ISO on this camera. That said, if you're just starting out in photography, you can always choose one of the more automatic modes. This camera is actually really generous with other automatic modes as well, and I find that the metering on this camera is actually quite nice. Not the most accurate, of course, but still usable for today's standards. And if you really learn about the camera and kind of get used to how sensitive the camera is with certain light, you can really control or learn to control with this camera on which settings to really use best, whether if you're in automatic mode, semi-automatic mode, or full manual. Then the next point I would like to touch on is the autofocusing system. The autofocusing system is of course not the latest out there. It only has 9 AF points, but in my opinion, it's definitely usable for just simple street photography and simple general photography out there that you want to do. So I think that, if you're staying within the rule of thirds, it's definitely going to cover the rule of thirds. In some cases, you might have to focus and recompose. What I mean by that is you focus on one subject within the same range, and then you recompose so that your frame is the same frame that you actually originally imagine it to be. So sometimes you just have to be creative, but for the most part, I think for general use, the focusing points definitely is sensitive enough, and it is still really accurate, and it's just laid out in a very logical place, and you can really utilize them for general purposes. So yeah, and now onto my last point, which is the menu system. The menu system on this camera is actually pretty plain, simple, and quite organized. So it's labeled in colors if you're in photo mode and everything. It's just like one long page, and it's not really such a long menu to go through. So, you know, you're not really gonna get lost in the menu nor the sub-menu settings. That means you can actually focus more on your scenes and just shooting the images. And also all of these buttons are like kind of essential buttons to already what you need for your photography modes. So if you're just adjusting your AF points, there is a dedicated button up here. If you're just adjusting your ISO, if you're just adjusting your drive mode and everything is just pretty much at your fingertips, so you don't really always have to go into the menu system. So that's pretty good, because you also have the details in the viewfinder as well. Should you wish to just, you know, look through the compose the image through your viewfinder, well, that's pretty much the only way. But if you just, you know, stick your eyes into the viewfinder, you don't really have to take your eye away from the viewfinder just to change your settings, because everything is just at your fingertips, and then also your dials. So that's great. And even if you just want to control your AF points in there, just press AF button here, and then either use the joystick, which is also quite nice, or just use the wheels or dials. So yeah. Oh, and also the joystick here is also quite nice for when you zoom into the images and just, you know, move around. And talking about viewing the images, I also like how responsive the images viewing on here is, because you don't really have to wait for such a long time like some of the older cameras. So with some of the older cameras, even the 10D, scrolling through the images feels like nightmare sometimes if you're like shooting on the streets, or you are really at a place where, or in a situation where you have to shoot really quickly, but you also want to review your images really quickly just to make sure you get the image. With this one, it loads very quickly. We take it for granted nowadays with, you know, more modern cameras and smartphones and everything, but back then, cameras from 2005, 2004 and earlier, they need time to actually load. Actually, a lot of those cameras needs time to load their images, even if you just press next. So yeah, this one's still quite fast. And anyway, let's move on into the image quality. The image quality of this camera is actually quite nice in my opinion. The skin tones are really nice. I love how it renders the colors of the skin tones. I love how it renders from the highlights to the shadows. I think it's quite natural. It is still really unique because, yes, the sensor is old, but you know, there's something about the sensor that I really love, that it creates this character that not only that it looks really nice straight out of the camera, but if you edit, like retouch the colors and just, you know, do some basic color editing with it, it just behaves really nicely. It doesn't fall apart very, you know, easily, but it does handle some basic editing as well. But if you're one of those people who like to edit a lot with their images, then I'd say that with the raw files, it does handle it quite well, unless if you're one of those people who really shoots at high ISO and then just recover a lot of details. Of course, it will show a lot of noise in the image and everything, but for general use, in my personal experience, it's a very fine, actually it's a very nice camera to use and also very fun. Not only that you get very nice color and also the rendition and the reproduction of the colors from the sensor that this camera actually produced, but I think that even with using ISO 800, and mind you 800 is also quite high at the time, it still renders the images quite nicely as well. And you know, with such a sensor of 1.6 crop sensor, which is still quite big in my opinion, you can actually do a lot of experiment and get even more interesting look out of this sensor. So let's say if you just have like a 50mm 1.8, you still can, you know, shoot portraits really nicely with this camera and also have that really nice blurry background and still shoot in low light as well, which the autofocusing system will definitely handle to a certain extent as well. So yeah, in terms of low light, it does produce really interesting character of images. In terms of normal daylight as well, it will also produce really unique color looking images as well. So there's not really much I can really complain about, especially with the price point, and especially keep in mind of how old this camera really is. That said, of course, the downside of this camera is, you know, the dynamic range. It's not the newest camera out there, so the dynamic range of this camera isn't really that good. That said, it's definitely workable for a general field of photography. I personally don't have any problems with it, simply because the rendition between the highlights and the shadows is actually quite natural. So having that alone, I think that the dynamic range is pretty much, you know, forgivable. And yeah, now onto the conclusion. I think that this camera is definitely a fun camera to use and a fun camera to really experiment. It does still actually deliver really unique results. So if you're looking to like unique color science of a camera, then this camera is definitely a camera to really consider, especially with the price point. Of course, there is something like the 30D here, which is only like 10 or 20 euros more expensive, depending on, you know, the time of the year and the region that you're in. So I got this for around 30-ish euros, and this for around 40 euros. So it was really just about 10 euros apart. But, you know, the colors are very similar. The 30D definitely has more performance, which I'll definitely make a video about the 30D, and it's coming very soon, of course, because I actually got them at the same time. So I definitely have enough time with both of them. But anyway, back to the 20D. The 20D is definitely still a very good camera, and I would still highly recommend it. You know, it's such a simple photography camera that if you just want a tool to just freshen up your mind and experiment with it, because especially with the price, you can just buy it and just, if it's not your cup of tea, you still can sell it for the same price or even higher, because what I saw on eBay, the price is actually slowly increasing. So I think a lot of people are also getting this camera as not only for experimenting, but also just to either dip their toes into photography or just collecting it because it's, you know, a really old camera. And yeah, another thing about being a very simple photography camera is also the fact that you can just focus on your shots, focus on the stories, focus on the moment as you're actually photographing, simply because a lot of times I personally, in my experience, that when working with, you know, the more modern cameras like my EOS R5 or my EOS R6, things like that, I get distracted by all the features sometimes that I think, oh, I can get this kind of image with this feature and everything. But a lot of times it can also be just refreshing to think about the simple conceptualization or the kind of story you're going for, just what's happening in front of you, and just the act of just, you know, capture the image. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I hope you can actually gain something from this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to just leave them down in the comment section below. If you want a free photography guidebook, it's absolutely for free on my website. The link is down in the description section below. So yeah, thank you very much again for watching. Stay safe, have fun shooting. Till next time, bye for now.